All right, we are live for the Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show, and wow, a lot of firecrackers, a lot of fireworks, a lot of things happening, and here we are in the midst of the beginning phases, perhaps, of a banking contagion that just started in the U.S. We'll see where it takes us. Mario, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, Mike, I'm doing well, and yes, there's an old saying about that, financially things. How do you go bankrupt? Slowly, and then all of a sudden, it
Yeah,
happens. And it's interesting you said it's starting in the U.S. And I always used to hear people saying the experts or the analysts saying that the U.S. banking system was robust. It was Europe that was more leveraged. But here we are. I just heard Bloomberg reporting about 10 minutes ago that Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB, they've just
mhm.
bitten the dust. And according to this reporter, it's the one of the biggest bank failures in history. And I didn't even realize they're number 16 in terms of assets. And so one of the biggest banks in the US. Maybe you might want to play that clip so the
Yeah,
viewers can listen
I
to it.
will. I will. So here we have, just which, as you mentioned, you sent me the chart of the top 20 banks, and there's 16 with 209 billion, supposedly, or not anymore. And then, of course, we're going to talk about some other banks as well. But let me go back here, and I'll play this, and hopefully the audio comes out.
Maybe you got to click on the.
Can you hear the audio?
No, I can't hear. Maybe you're gonna click on the video thing on Twitter.
I'll do it this way. I'll put it on my mic.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I can. This is basically what she said, that depositors with less than 250,000, they should be covered by the FDIC. But those with any amount above 250,000, they need to contact the bank. And but as of now, the FDIC has taken over this bank, and yeah, 175 billion in deposits. And you were telling me something about Peter Thiel earlier
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, let me bring this up here. So as of yesterday, he apparently triggered perhaps the initial bank run at SVB by telling some of his, or as it says here, Peter Thiel's founders fund advises companies to withdraw money from the SVB. And so when this pretty much came out, it's good to say he had already pulled his, and a lot of people in his inner circle probably pulled theirs. But then again, he made this publicly, and that's where things really began. And then that led to what else we got here? So as of 2 hours ago, there was this warning that was given by this young lady here, talked about online banking services and mobile banking services have been basically temporarily or permanently now frozen or whatever. So online banking systems and mobile services are currently unavailable. So for the most part, people were trying to, get access to their funds, and all of a sudden they were not able to log on. So this is a classical bank run, but in a more modernized form, in a digital form, of people trying to get on their phones, look at them, and make some activity happen, and can't do it. So this
Yeah,
is
and I think this bank. Sorry to interrupt you. This
no, go
bank
ahead.
is also kind of a private equity and like asset manager, and they did a lot of they finance a lot of tech startups in Silicon Valley. So I think the depositors, a lot of them are quite high net worth individuals.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's why Peter Thiel took his money out yesterday, because he probably had a lot more than $250,000. So a
Yeah,
lot of people are going to get left holding the bag, and that's why we've been warning for years that uh, yeah, these banks are not safe. It's the fractional reserve system. The money
yeah,
that you thought you had there, it's not there. It's been lent out, and one of the reasons they talk about why SVB is in trouble is because they invested a lot in treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, and their portfolio lost billions because treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, they've been going south ever since the beginning of last year.
right. And so I'm reading a lot about the interest rate hikes. How obviously interest rate hikes has caused a lot of damage for the banking sector. Now, clearly, the central bankers had to have known that with their quantitative tightening narrative, they were going to also impact the banks themselves. And so, is this the day of reckoning we're witnessing now with borrowing costs basically accelerating and coming back to bite those the banks that hold all those debt liabilities?
I think so. And, one of the banks that has been accumulating the most losses, and the reason why it's not insolvent, it's because it's the Federal Reserve. Clive Thompson, who I interviewed a few times since November, he wrote on LinkedIn the other day that the Fed's losing about $3 billion a day because the Fed has a big portfolio of mortgage-backed securities and treasuries, just like SVB had. And the Fed is also having to pay banks like close to the Fed funds rate, and they're only receiving like very low rates from their bond portfolio because rates have been low for so long, so the coupon is very low. So the Fed has unrealized losses in the hundreds of billions, if not more. It could be up to $1 trillion.
And I said they're not the only bank. So I talked about this the other day. Swiss National Bank reports annual losses of 132.5 billion Swiss francs. So every central bank that's a part of that QT tightening phase is experiencing some losses. So there's holders of those losses on the other side of that equation.
And there's the other bank that we were talking about before we came on, First Republic Bank.
Yeah, let me grab that.
Yeah, earlier today it was down to $47, and now it's at $78, but it's still down 18%. And that's number 15 in the United States. That's just above SVB. So it looks like this contagion could be starting from the mid-tier banks. I don't know if you call them mid-tiers, but they're not starting like on Wall Street, with the big banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, or Citigroup. But this could quickly spread. This reminds me of 2008.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it quickly spreads and it's going upward. It's going to spread upward to the top.
15, 14.
To the globally systemic important banks. And then here is just that little headline I had on there. First Republic, PacWest plunge amid wider bank stock sell-off. And then I was actually watching, here's that little chart here that we have here at the top 15. So just from 16 to 15 and 14. I mean, so, at what point?
These are all like dominoes, lined up maybe.
Right. And they're falling upward. So at what point does the government, central bank, or somebody admit default or admit some type of contagion event? And then what will be the step-in process? Like, if things start to fall upward, dominoes are falling, panic is ensuing. And on top of the fact that FDIC had their meeting last November saying that, at some point people are going to realize that they're going to be bailed in. Like, is this? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed, Mike, if you, I don't know if you can bring it up, but I send you the link.
Yeah,
is
go
that
ahead.
U.S. Treasury yields today, they've dropped massively, which means people are buying treasuries. And some people might argue, oh, that's because there's contagion, there's trouble in the stock market, so they're buying treasuries. But I would venture to say maybe the Fed's stepping in to buy treasuries. And why would they do that? Well, because a lot of these banks are in trouble because treasury prices have been going down, especially in the short end. You look at the two-year and the 5-year. They were going. The 2-year a few days ago was above 5%. So right now, you see all those yields are down, and I wouldn't put it past the Fed that they did a bit of QE. Not to change monetary policy, but to stop the bleeding. And the reason why I say that is that there was a Fed president. Her name is Logan. She's the new Dallas Fed president. And about a week ago, she said that the Treasury market, bond markets are not stable, and that the Fed could step in to do some kind of QE, but it wouldn't be And she says, but it wouldn't be real QE. She says it wouldn't be for monetary policy. So you can see there, yeah, Fed's Logan. So I don't have proof that they're doing anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're not there.
Now, how much does this ring a bell as far as the Contagion potential event that took place in the UK over the gilts? Was it fall to where there was some panicking behind the scenes? Of course, the central bank jumped in and did a couple of things to try to prop things up. So is that kind of what you're probably referring to a little bit?
Well, the Contagion I was referring to earlier about banks like falling and collapsing was back in 08 when Lehman collapsed.
Right.
I remember I was working in the city still, and we were sitting there and we're saying, well, Morgan Stanley is next, and then Goldman Sachs, and then the Fed allowed them to become holding banks, commercial banks overnight, and they bailed them out. But that's what I meant. It could go very quickly once we've seen SVB go. We could see First Republic and then Citizens. But yeah, it reminds me as well of what happened in the UK. That maybe the Fed will have to step in like the Bank of England did, and the Treasury as well could step in. U.S. Treasury.
Yeah, here's just some more insight from that one young lady.
Or maybe Zelensky could step in because he's got quite a bit of.
Yeah, a lot of those funds was trapped up in the FTX, so that's why they're trying to sort that out so they can get it back to them. But here's from that young lady we talked about earlier, unrealized gains on investment securities, and because she mentioned 2008 says bank balance sheets. The irony here is that safe assets, quote, bonds, regulators made bank hold since 2008 are actually the problem.
I spoke about this. This is the FDIC. Losses, and this is from end of September last year, and I did a video with John Titus exactly, and we showed this chart, but now they've got an update to this chart, and it has the fourth quarter. The losses have kind of decreased, but they're still, look how huge the losses are compared to 08, and like you said, they forced them to buy treasuries and mortgage-backed securities because they thought they were safe, and they're not.
Pristine collateral no longer, huh? The flight to safety. So I put up something. Let me see. I put up something on Twitter about because I noticed yesterday there was a little bit of a mad dash to. Let me grab this if I can. Let me put this on the screen. So yeah, there's a little bit of a a sell-off rather. There's a sell-off in everything for the most part. But let me see. I put. Let me, if I can zoom in. Let me zoom in so people can see it. I said after the initial bank run, the flight to safety begins. You'll learn the hard way that you don't own it if you don't hold it. And I put hashtag silver gold smart money.
Yeah. And I was just telling you because someone tweeted out that they bought some silver here in the UK and at a really good price. And I checked the price and I said, yeah, that's a really good price. And I went to the website and bought some myself. So I just hopefully I'll get it sometime next week. I think we got a super chat there from PM Galleria.
All right. So Pierre says, why not let politicians and central banks personally pay off the debts they incurred against our wishes? Yeah, we wish that. They are just as much in a hot seat as the banking sector because the political charades are still underway. The debt ceiling debacle still underway. So yeah, it's coming apart at the seams even more so. It's hard to hide. You can't lie your way through this one.
What people don't understand, like or maybe some do, PM Galleria, is that when you put money in a bank, it doesn't stay there. They take $100 and they go and buy $1,000 worth of mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. And why do they do that? Well, to earn a return. But if those securities go down in value, they lose a lot of that $1,000, and that's off the back of your $100. So that's what people don't realize, that their money in the bank is not real. It's an unsecured loan, and they've taken that and they leverage it many times over, and the stuff that they bought with it is going down the tubes. That's the problem.
Yeah. Now, speaking of which, earlier in the week, I think it was was it Tuesday? There was a lot of panic in reference to the concerns of Jerome Powell mentioning about the need for furthering the hikes or whatever. And so I've seen some people float out the idea of a half a point, and I saw just recently 3/4 of a point type figures. Now, is that back on the table now,
I
or what do you
think
think?
let's not forget today we had non-farm payroll, which is should have been the big thing today, but it came out a little higher. The non-farm payroll 313,000 or so, but the unemployment rate actually went up from 3.4 to 3.6. It was expected to stay at 3.4. And also hourly earnings, which the Fed follows closely, it was lower than expected, which is good. And then yesterday as well, we had jobless claims, and that was higher, went above 200,000. So I think people are actually, especially with all the trouble in the banking sector, they're only going for 25 basis points now. And who knows, maybe the Fed won't be able to raise rates. We still have about 11 days. A lot could happen in 11 days. We could see another 2-3 of these banks go under. And I think that the Fed is going to have to step in.
Now, isn't it interesting also that it's a Friday and there's a banking contagion possibly starting on a Friday, to where, depending on how things shake out, no doubt this weekend there are going to be some meetings, some calls. They're going to be talking seriously, because heading into Monday could be a hell of a week, and then leading into that entire week is just so many fireworks of things going off right now, and that's just in reference to the financial sector. So let's keep it moving. We got a couple other things worth talking about. Let me get into it. Let me see here. So the next major story that is flying under the radar so far happens to be Iran and Saudi Arabia agree to restore relations. So there's going to be peace amongst these alleged enemies, which is very surprising, given the fact that China is the one that's orchestrating this deal. And so, is this leading up to some type of announcement, perhaps head into the summer, where in order to join the BRICS, we got to all be on the same page? We can't have any inner turmoil amongst ourselves as we're shifting this system out of the West into our coffers. So what are you thinking, man?
Actually, that's a very good point, Mike. I hadn't thought of that, before getting, I would say it's not the BRICS anymore. It's the A to Z. It's all, everyone wants to join. So yeah, you can't have the Saudis and the Iranians, which would be an important part of this multipolar world, being at odds with each other. So, and I think it's significant that the Chinese orchestrated this peace deal. It's like a peace deal. They're going to reopen embassies in a couple of months, and it's the old division as well between Shia and Sunni. Which is even, some people argue, even more divisive.
Serious?
Divisive and serious than like Christianity versus Islam. So yeah, I think it's significant, and it shows that how the U.S. is losing influence. In the past, you would have thought the U.S. would have tried to negotiate the deal between these two countries. You remember back in the 70s, Jimmy Carter. He orchestrated the peace deal between Egypt and Israel. That's the kind of stuff the United States used to do, but now China is doing it. It just goes to show how the world's changing.
Yeah. And speaking of which, this is off topic, and you may not be familiar with this, but I read something, I forgot to bring it up, but it looks like one of our politicians here in the U.S. is firing shots at Argentina because China wants to establish a manufacturing for their FJ-17, and so it's reported that I forgot the quote, but the politician said that there'll be a backlash if you allow China into Argentina to build their version of their warplane, and so China's spreading their tentacles everywhere. Everybody's jumping on board with what's happening over there. like I just really think this next BRICS meeting, they're going to have something ready. Like it's a matter of getting everything ready for this upcoming summit, to where they're going to definitely make give some shocking news, perhaps. And it has everything to do with the Bitcoin or whatever they're going to be calling it, or the payment railroads and things like that. So
it's interesting because I don't know, it could be Ted Cruz from Texas, the senator, because I saw a couple of weeks ago that some Iranian naval vessels docked in the port of Rio de Janeiro, and he was really angry. He said, the United States should sanction Brazil or the port of Rio for allowing Iranians there. You see, this is the vestige of the Monroe Doctrine back in the 1800s, was that the Western Hemisphere would be America's backyard. But I think that's changing as well. And why should the United States tell Argentina what to do? And I think they're going to have a tough time stopping this, unless they want to sanction Argentina, Brazil, and then they're going to be sanctioning the whole world, and that's going to drive people more and more apart from the United States. And I'm not sure. It could have been Ted Cruz. Is the kind of thing he probably, because he wasn't happy about the naval ships in Rio from Iran.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was a young lady for sure. I wish I should have did a better job of having it ready, but it just came to mind. But while you were talking, I pulled up some other things in reference to Argentina and how China is definitely getting involved. So here's a headline here. It says, why China wants to power Argentina's Air Force modernization. And this is a little bit older, but it's underway. And then this was a couple weeks ago. It says China looks to build a naval base in Argentina, a gateway to Antarctica. So that's what's down in Antarctica.
We know from Captain Admiral Byrd
that
there's a lot of, it's bigger than the United States down there, and there's a lot of resources.
Right, and it's just not all ice. There's green. There's some warm stuff down there. So wouldn't it be interesting if, stuff really hits the fan and more information is disclosed on what's down there and how the U.S. has been basically leading all this, and of course the UN and all the entities or whatever. But
do you mean, Mike? Do you mean around there instead of down there in Antarctica?
Yeah, around there. Yeah, good point. So for those who may not know, off air, I hope you don't mind, Mario, but off air, me and Mario have some interesting discussions on the shape of things and what's really going on. So that's a little inside thing. But all right, let's keep moving. What else we got here? Precious metals, man. Let's just touch on that. Gold. Like gold is here's despite what people have been concerned with, the gold prices haven't moved, and it's not been performing. As always, look outside your own currency and see what's happening around the world. But central banks, well beyond this local contagions of the commercial banks, they've been getting their weight up. So here's just some stats and some facts here to let you know what's going on. Like, these people are not racing to this old barbarous relic for nothing. There's obviously something that they know is coming, or they're preparing themselves for. So don't just listen to what they do what they do, in a sense, in my personal opinion. But
yeah. So
go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Basically, Singapore, for example, they increased their gold reserves in February by almost 30%. They bought 45 tons. The Chinese are continuing to buy. Uzbekistan is continuing to buy, and Turkey. It's a shame that I can't say, the UK is continuing to buy and the United States is continuing to buy. It just seems to me that I'm not saying I'd like to live in China or Uzbekistan or Turkey, but at least they seem to, their monetary leaders seem to know what real money is and what the situation is, that it's better to have gold than shares in Silicon Valley Bank or First Republic.
Right. Or continue to subsidize basically broke, defaulted governments by buying these debt IOU nothings and then spinning off currencies off these things, because that game is coming to an end ultimately. So but then here on the local level, I even mentioned this not long ago, talking about how Idaho House votes to authorize silver and gold silver holding. So the first state looks like they're going to be holding their capital in actual sound money, which is always a good thing. And then we have more states looking to remove sales taxes off of. We got Mississippi, Kentucky as of right now, with pending with Maine, Wisconsin, Vermont, while Minnesota and Alaska are considering an expansion of their existing sales tax exemption. So a lot of things are happening in reference to the states taking action.
It seems like it's similar to those countries. They're buying gold. China, in the U.S. is I think the gold's probably flowing from the blue states to the red states, right?
Good point. That's a good way of looking at it.
Low blood pressure says that Texas should join the BRICS. And Rolf Steiner says Texas could rejoin Mexico.
So yeah, there's still talk of the secession from the Union, and so that has always been on the table. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit that if Abbott, the governor, decides to move ahead with some of that talk even further, because I know they got their own depository and things of that nature. What's in it, I don't know, but
Texas is the only state that became a state by treaty. Usually, it was done through Congress, and you became a territory, and then you graduated to statehood. Texas became because there was a Texas Republic, and then they joined the United States by treaty. And I think that treaty is the Treaty of Hidalgo. I think that has to be renewed every year, and it's done automatically, I think. So technically, the governor or whoever might not decide to renew that treaty. That means that Texas would become a republic again. Well, it is a republic, but it would be independent.
Right. Yeah. And that would be, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Because on top of that, if you become your own entity, then you need your own currency and everything in between. And Abbott has been very vocal on talking about Bitcoin, making Bitcoin a part of our state and stuff like that. Never hear him mention and encourage his citizens to get gold and silver, but you want to join the Bitcoin craze. So, as long as people got options, I guess that's better than nothing. But what else we got here? All right. Let's talk a little bit about, let me see here. Of course, the crypto space is not doing well for those who follow it. And Silvergate, the crypto bank, also went belly up. So that's never a good thing. But as of right now, we got a lot of red on the crypto side of things. And that's just in relation to the possible regulatory capital gains as well. That's another issue that's being talked about here. Talk about raising taxes all across the board, doubling capital gains tax. So that's going to be interesting. So never a dull moment. Let me get rid of this on the screen here. Then we can get some questions, I guess. Let's get to some questions.
I just looked up. Texas was an independent republic from 1836 to 1846.
18, okay. Interesting. All right, so let's get to some questions if you want to, and then of course there's a couple other topics we can touch on. Lots of events happening in the UK as well. We'll get to some questions or to cover some of those other articles in reference to the UK.
There's Joshua Porter. What do you guys think is better to buy right now? 100-ounce a bar of silver or a 1-ounce gold coin? I would buy the silver. If I was in the US, I'd buy the silver. In the UK, probably the silver as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would as well. Just
and if I could, I'd buy both.
Yeah, well, you won't go wrong with either one. But yeah, that 100-ounce silver, and on top of that, just we're still waiting on the true nominal number of what an ounce of anything is. Nevertheless, silver being highly suppressed, and the gold to silver ratio right now is still, extremely lopsided. And so anywhere you go, you're going to make up quite well in reference to being able to accumulate some additional purchasing power. So, all right, let's get to some questions. So feel free to throw out thoughts, ideas, suggestions, or whatever in reference to what's going on or anything in between, and we'll try to jump on it. Carlos
Garcia says the Texas oil refineries are back. Apparently, the Mexican government owned the refineries in Texas. That's strange. I didn't know about that.
I didn't know that either. And also, just some more stuff pops in my mind. We've had, I think, 3 train derailments in like a week or 2 weeks. Like One happened, I think, yes, 2 days ago, and so it's
Oh
like,
yeah. Low blood pressure is asking a question.
will the
What,
FDIC pay the banks all the credit card debt when it fails?
I think the FDIC only insures depositors,
Right.
not yeah. It doesn't insure the bank's assets.
And that's another thing. So all these banks, and that's an interesting one. All these banks that have issued credit cards to their depositors and everybody else charge an astronomical 24, 25% interest rates, whatever. And so those are all in-house uh, tools, ultimately speaking. So they can discharge. So that those are their own. Those balances are on their own balance sheets. Am I correct?
Yeah, they're assets to the bank.
Correct.
You know, your debt, credit card debt with, let's say, Silicon Valley Bank is an asset to Silicon Valley Bank. So I think what will happen when they sell off, when people, FDIC and the administrators and whoever, there's going to probably be other banks buying their assets. So you can be sure that the credit card debt will probably be the debt that will be bought. And people who have credit card debt with SVB doesn't mean they're going to be let off because someone else.
Can't they discharge that debt though? Like let it go? Like, I mean, Canada last year, 2 years ago, wiped away like what I think mass one. There was a major just cleaning of house in Canada a year or two ago. I remember talking about it to where they just cleared it out, canceled everybody's account, cleared all the debt out, and that was all she wrote. So, it's make believe currency anyway. So
I'm not a specialist in those subjects. I'm just trying to, but it's possible, I guess.
Here's a question. It said lots of talks of partisans could train derailments due to U.S. anti-Biden partisans like Red Dawn Wolverines. I don't know anything about that. I don't know. Anything is possible in this world. I know one thing we all can probably agree on at this point. Whenever you hear the word conspiracy mentioned on any subject matter, you might want to dive deeper because you're probably closer to truth. And so if that's a current conspiracy floating around there, then it might have some validity to it. Who knows?
Carl Hansen has made an interesting comment, not a question, and is related to this question here. He says that Federal Railroad Administration has reported an average of 1,475 train derailments per year between 2005 and 2021. So basically saying this is normal. It's just that it's being put out there.
Yeah. And how often are a lot of those train derailings happen to be carrying toxic not toxic type substances that at the same time we know the food issue and all those other things happen to be at play as well. So yeah, make of it what you may. Chris, it says here, can you comment on rumors that Japan would join the BRICS? Andy Schegman spoke of this on a recent video. If it were to happen, how would it affect the West? Thanks.
I think it would be very significant. I haven't heard that Japan's looking to join the BRICS. It would, it would be huge, actually.
So, and that's where it's like, okay, if all of these countries basically turn on the G7 Western-led globalist cartel and looks to run into the BRICS organization, like, I wonder how would that play with all their previous debt incurred and created? How would they make that right? Like literally, we still have to go through the reset process or the washing away of the old and bringing in the new. And so, like, Japan is, 200, 300% GDP, the debt GDP. And so, like, it's just all washed away. We start anew. And everybody.
I don't think Japan would be doing that because a lot of the Japanese debt is owned by the Bank of Japan and also by Japanese domestic savers. Don't think it would affect, it would just probably affect the relationship between Japan and the West and how much dollar reserves it holds. I would say, but I haven't really seen any stories about that.
Right.
But
right.
I wouldn't put it, I wouldn't like discount it. It's possible. The UK could join the BRICS. anyone could join the BRICS.
Right. So I wonder what the stipulations will be for joining the BRICS. Obviously, you got to have some gold to bring to the table because that's why all these countries are scrambling to get gold. So you got all the G7, G20 nations for the most part that have been trying to downplay and either lease out or get rid of their gold, sell their gold to keep the price down. Then what? They're ass out without a paddle. So
I think it's more than just having gold and having that currency. It's also about cooperating and also respecting. It's not like subjugating to the United States and the Anglo-American Empire.
Yeah,
I mean, the Chinese and the Russians recently, they've talked about that we have to have democracy in international relations as well. We can't have just one country dictating to the other countries.
Yeah. And on top of that, just beyond gold, just natural resources in general, bring something to the table that the world really needs other than just debt. And so that's pretty much the bulk of all the people looking to join. They all bring something to the table, of course, and then beyond gold. So
Grateful 79, best place right now to buy silver. Where are you, Grateful 79? Are you in the States? I'll let you answer that one, Mike. I'm not sure.
My advice, or not my advice, but what I always do is, having a good relationship with your local coin dealer is probably the best place where you can get something immediately. Now, if you want to shop around, of course, there's different online places. I know you, Miles Franklin, SD Bullion. Yeah. So there's a buku place to go, but it's always better to have a relationship with somebody locally. So because you can trust them, and if you need to get rid of yours or sell it, you can take it back to them and probably get a good deal because you know them. So that'll be my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have like a affiliation with Miles Franklin and ITM Trading, but silver, I think ITM, Miles Franklin, they have some pretty good deals for silver right now if he wants to look into it. But I don't know if you can use credit cards, like low blood pressure saying you should use your credit card. But and if you do go look at silver with Miles Franklin, tell him Maneko 64 or me sent you there. So there you go.
Sent you. What else you got here? All right, so we got some more thoughts out here. Feel free to throw out some more thoughts, ideas, suggestions. And so we are in the 10th day of the month of March, and spring is not here yet, but yet it's starting to be very interesting to say the least. And so we got the Fed rate hike coming soon enough. We'll see what happens with that. And along the way, markets are going to be very turbulent on top of the extra pressure from the banking sector. Any let me just check and see if any breaking news in reference to another bank, perhaps.
At First Republic Bank here, because it's been all over the place. Right now it's down about 20% at $77, but it's been as high as 95 and as low as 47 in the same day. And that's the 15th biggest bank in the US by assets. That's how volatile it is. So they're not out of the woods. I think you will see a lot of volatility in the markets in the next week or so. And you said the Fed rate hike. Well, they might not even be able to hike rates. Who knows?
Yeah, that will be something worth seeing. What else here? Ideas of March approaching. Let me see. Nothing else. I don't see anything else out there. All right. Well, we're about 40 minutes or so. So there you have it, people. It's Friday. We got an official bank closing or being taken over by FDIC. That's just the first one of probably more to come. But the FDIC basically told us what to expect in reference to bail-in process and everything in between. So I think give us one takeaway for this weekend, Mario, from all this stuff just starting right now. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm not worried at all. And hopefully a lot of you guys watching aren't worried, because we've been like warning about this for years, and we've been saying, don't keep too much of your funds with the bank. So that's what I'm thinking. I do have some funds in the bank because I need to keep it for tax purposes, unfortunately, and for expenses, but it wouldn't really hurt me. So that's the thing. Right now, I think a lot of people in the last few years are going to say, oh, gold and silver haven't done anything. But I mean, you will sleep a lot more soundly at night knowing that you've got gold and silver instead of a deposit with First Republic or Silicon Valley Bank or Citizens Bank or whatever bank.
Yeah, 100%. And so low blood pressure mentioned about what about Wells Fargo? And I looked on the little map there, and Wells Fargo is number 4. So
Yeah,
we
it's
got
got a little ways to go. Maybe
yeah, we got
by the end of next week we'll get to Wells Fargo.
yeah. So as of now, we got 16 was basically shut down for the most part. We're gonna have 15 is on the brink. We're seeing here and there their price action, their stock. So we got 14, 13, 12. So we, probably next week we'll have more to talk about, perhaps, or something else, because all this right here seems like an ideal way to bring in a new event of some kind to divert people's attention from their bank accounts, so they won't be running to more banks as this news picks up. So you never know.
Or like you said earlier, this is happening on a Friday, so we could have some kind of an announcement during the weekend. And if you haven't got your money out of the banks, maybe I'm not trying to be like
doom and gloomish.
Yeah, but I'm just saying they could announce something over the weekend.
Not a doom and gloom, just being real.
But they could some kind of measures to stabilize things. But all that would mean is more liquidity and more funny money into the system.
Yeah. Well, my good people, as always, it's great to connect with you. Thought we'd bring in this information here, share our 2 cents on it. But of course, if you've been plugged in to this channel and Manico 64, you've known that these events were coming. We've been talking about a banking event. Could this be it? The start of it? We'll have to wait and see. But as always, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. A lot of people are finding out right now when they look on their screen and try to transfer and move some stuff around. So just something to be aware of. But all right. Well, enjoy your weekend, everybody. Be blessed. Be safe. Mario, of course, next week, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about, and we'll see where this stuff takes us. But be blessed, be safe, and, of course, stay prayed.